evening to you all out there, and welcome into another episode of the Bark and Brown Show. I'm Jacob, Mr. Casey Kinnaman, and Nick Carnes down below. We're brought to you as always by our friends over at SeatGeek. Nick and I recently got our tickets to SummerSlam in Cleveland next weekend. Got our tickets over on SeatGeek. Go over there, use our promo code Barking Browns, get $20 off that purchase. Get you some tickets for the season, whatever you want to do. Some preseason action, SummerSlam, a Creed concert, perhaps, all that good stuff. It's out there. If you're on Twitter, you're watching us on Twitter or Twitch or Facebook, please go to the YouTube, youtube.com/@thebarkingbrowns and subscribe there. Give us a thumbs up. Helps us a ton over on that side as well. If you're watching this on an article, if this is embedded in an article on the Browns Wire, and you know it will be, if you go to the bottom right corner and hover over our logo, you'll see the subscribe button there as well. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Gentlemen, I am fantastic. We're in the rapids now. We got to talk football all season, and there were moves happening, but now we're in it. Now we're getting live clips. There's drills happening. There's running backs on side fields doing sprints and agility drills, dude. We're back, baby. We're all the way back.
I don't want to spoil too much of Tuesday's show, but we got a certain running back that was not to be filmed. Oh, how very fitting of a shirt choice for you tonight.
I'm just gonna put it out there. Chubb gave me a Chubb today. That's it. That's where we're at.
We'll get way deeper into all of these things that we're seeing and hearing from everybody on Tuesday. But we have got another one of our previews tonight.
Yeah, we're into the AFC North, man.
That's it, man. As this opponent preview series rolls on, we're into the weeds now. We're actually dealing with the division, and I think this subsection should be called Know Your Enemy.
Yeah,
because this is someone we're going to get to talk, battle twice a year. So, and the first team we play in the division is the Baltimore Ravens. So, if we're going to talk Baltimore Ravens, who better to get than a guest who deals with them on a day in, day out basis, does a daily show, writes for the Ravens Wire. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, from Locked On Ravens, Mr. Kevin Oestreicher.
Hey, what's up, guys? Let's see. This is the best division in football. I don't want anybody to get it twisted. I could see all double-digit win teams this year, but I've been actually on this show, and I've been on record saying that I think that the Browns could be a little sneaky this season. I thought it was going to be the case last season. Obviously, plenty of quarterback, including the beloved Joe Flacco here in Baltimore. But I don't know, guys. This division is chalking up to be a good one.
Just before we get into the actual Ravens, I want to ask you a Joe Flacco question, just because I totally blanked on it. Was it as hard? It was hard for me when he was wearing that jersey because he just killed us for a decade.
Right?
Was it weird? Did you eventually accept it, or was it just weird the whole time?
It was definitely weird the whole time, and honestly, if you looked on Ravens social media and with Ravens fans, there were two very specific sections. There was a clear divide between, oh, we love Joe Flacco, we're going to root for him only when he plays the Ravens, or we're not going to root for Joe Flacco. And then there was the other side, which is we hate every AFC North team. We're not rooting for anybody in any AFC North team's uniform. And it was that very clear divide where it was you never expected to see Joe go to one of these teams. And it was a very weird thing to see, but I mean, the redemption story was it was crazy all the way around. Now I'm always going to wonder, it's the what if for me, is if Cleveland had beaten Houston, that divisional round game, Baltimore and Cleveland, Flacco and Lamar, what that would have been like. But unfortunately we'll never know.
Being denied that game still upsets me. I'm not going to lie. I wanted it so bad just to see Flacco there. It probably would have been the most watched game of that round, just because the storyline was too good. The Browns didn't do their part. That is no fault of Baltimore's.
It writes itself.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Casey?
Yeah, let's jump into it, man. So when I was reviewing the Ravens for this year, I started on the defensive side of the ball. And the 23 Ravens, I mean, you led the best scoring defense in the league, the most takeaways, the most sacks. And as a result, you guys get your cabinet rated. You get your Mike McDonald gets head coaching opportunity. Anthony Weaver's at DC. Denard Wilson's in Tennessee. So tell me about Zach Orr, the replacement over at the DC for the Ravens, and what assistant coaches did he bring in?
Yeah, so Orr is somebody that I think after this whole, the cabinets getting raided and everything, they understood that they had to keep at least somebody here. And Orr was getting interest from Green Bay. Maybe he was going to follow McDonald to Seattle to be his DC, but Ravens offered him that job and he scooped it up pretty quickly. They believe that he can be the next Mike McDonald. He's a younger guy, so he played for 3 years in the league with the Ravens. He was undrafted and was actually a second team All Pro his last year in the league, but had to retire medically due to a neck injury. So he didn't really know what he wanted to do next in life, but got back into the coaching world. The Ravens gave him a couple opportunities. He flourished in that. Then he went to Jacksonville with Urban Meyer in that year that I don't really think existed with Urban Meyer in Jacksonville, but then it ends up happening, and he comes back to Baltimore. And the thing, guys, is if you want to be the defensive coordinator of the Ravens, all I have to do is be their inside linebacker. The last 4 or 5 defensive coordinators of the Ravens have been their inside linebackers. McDonald was that, Todd Martindale was that, Dean Pease was that. But he's been very clear about his defense is going to be aggressive. They're going to play violent. He was that type of player, and he's that type of coach where he was asked about, are you going to be calling plays up in the booth? You're going to be down on the field? And he said, no, I got to be down there with my guys. I got to feel those emotions with them. And that's that fiery personality that is loved. And, he even set a tone as an assistant coach. And I think it's very rare to find that in today's game where, defensive coordinators can. McDonald had those viral moments, San Francisco was pumping his fist and everybody got, that clip out there. But Orr's that guy who was always like right next to the guys in the clips and firing everybody up. So when you look at what the Ravens have, they lost a lot of guys, even just personnel-wise, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But his unit was one of the best last season, and to me, the one thing that people might be a little worried about here in Baltimore is he has no prior play calling experience. This is his first defensive coordinator gig anywhere, first play caller gig anywhere. Now, I think that will come with a little bit of bumps and bruises along the way early, but I think over time he'll get the hang of it. But for this Baltimore team, it's how long of a runway do you have here? Because this is a team competing for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think where I start, and you kind of talked about it, like they've lost some things here. I started at pass rusher. I mean, you lose Jadeveon Clowney, you use the guy that was production-wise at least the best pass rusher they had last year, which was really interesting because he then signed really early this offseason.
Yes.
He never does that. And like we've done the Jadeveon Clowney dance, but I love Odafe Owe. Like I think that was like one of those. I love to bet on traits when it comes to those pass rushers, especially coming out. I love David Ajabo in that class as well. But how do you feel about that room? There's no Jadeveon Clowney. Do you think they've got enough? Who's going to step up? Just kind of talk through that position.
Yeah, I think they have enough if everybody can stay healthy. But that's the big question. And again, that's for a lot of rooms and a lot of teams, right? But with Clowney gone, essentially, and this is across pretty much the entire Baltimore roster, this is a promotion year for the Ravens, a year where they lost so many vets and they decided to trust their youth. And that is the same thing in the pass rusher group where they could have gone out there and signed a guy. They could have traded for like Hassan Reddick or someone, and who knows what's going on in New York with him right now. But I think that what they wanted to do was, with the way that this roster is built, with Lamar on his rookie or past the rookie deal, is now on the big contract, but also all these other big contracts they have to hit on their draft picks and hit on their veteran minimum signings, and they don't have a ton of cap space. So they've been preparing for this possibility for multiple different seasons. Now, did they know Jadeveon Clowney was going to go out there and have 9+ sacks and Cobb Van Noy the same thing? Probably not, and that made them choose between the two. But always a guy that now has to step in for Clowney and take that leap, almost like a Justin Madubuike type leap where he was kind of like, oh, this guy's pretty good. And then this past season, he had 13 sacks. You're like, okay, he's arrived. Owe has to arrive this year. In training camp so far, the reports are he's been a menace so far, actually to the point where John Harbaugh had to pull him aside and say, hey, don't get that close to the quarterbacks. We're not in that phase of training camp yet, so just back off a little bit. But that's part of the stuff that the Ravens need. But the key X factor to me, guys, is David Ajabo, their second-round pick a couple years ago out of Michigan. suffered the Achilles injury at his pro day and missed pretty much his whole rookie season, came back. Actually, his first ever tackle was a strip sack on Joe Burrow. So that makes, I think, Ravens and Browns fans happy when it comes to that. But then he had a partially torn ACL at the beginning part of last season. So really has had 2 years lost. His first 2 seasons lost 2 serious injuries. So Kyle Van Noy's back. He's your vet leader. Dafe Owe, hopefully he takes that step. But then it's Ajabo, guys like Tavius Robinson and Adisa Isaac. That's a pretty unproven 3 through 5. So you're hoping they can get through the year healthy, or else it's going to test them a lot.
Kevin, last year it felt like the Browns and Ravens were 2 of those teams that were right there in the conversation for which team's got the best defense in the NFL, probably with the 49ers as well. Felt like that went back and forth a bunch of times. And we've touched on some of the losses, but it's like, Patrick Queen goes to Pittsburgh, Geno Stone goes to Cincinnati. And so I'm just looking big picture. Do you think, and especially with the staff losses you touched on as well, do you think that the Ravens can still rise up to that elite level defense next year? Or do you think, is this more of a building year for them where maybe they take a little bit of a step back?
I think they'll still be an elite defense, but it's going to be a harder year overall for them. I think a lot of people in Baltimore last year, especially with how good that unit put up some even like NFL history numbers in some certain categories last season. Like that's how good they were. And that was a product of their stars like a Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, etc. But it really was because guys got injured and other guys stepped up. You mentioned Geno Stone there, Nick, and Marcus Williams had a significant injury that cost him a decent amount of time with his pec. Actually came back and was playing with like one arm for the whole season after that. But Geno Stone stepped in and there wasn't a drop-off. And then Marlon Humphrey goes down and Ronald Darby comes in. And there's not really a drop-off because Darby had the best year of his career, essentially. So it's that type of thing where you signed so many vets and you had all that depth. But now that's what I was talking about with like the promotion type thing where, for example, Queen goes. Now Trenton Simpson comes in, who's a second-year guy out of Clemson who is like a Patrick Queen light, but he doesn't have that experience yet. So what is that going to look like? It's a lot of unknowns outside of your stars. Now, the stars to me are what hold this whole thing together, like a Smith, like a Hamilton. They signed Eddie Jackson, which I thought was a great move for a third safety type of player, not having to rely on him to be a starter, but more so as a depth piece. But to me, the bread and butter in Baltimore is the secondary. And that to me is what is either going to carry the defense or cause them to collapse. And this goes, I think, the entire NFL, guys. I know that you guys have dealt with it in Cleveland as well, where it seems like every year, everybody's talking about how much depth all these teams have at corner. And then by the time we're midseason, it's like, oh, well, they're down to 2 healthy corners and we gotta go make moves now. And that it seems like that's on repeat. And it's certainly been that way in Baltimore. So they tried to address that depth. So I think, are they going to put up historic numbers this year? Possible, but I don't think that's realistic. I think they'll probably be more so like top 3 to 4, maybe even 2 this season. I could see them as 1, but I don't think it's going to be as easy for them because it just felt like last year was so easy. But then it wasn't when they lost to Kansas City when it mattered, and that obviously is what counts.
It reminds me too. Sorry, it just reminds me. What I try to say and I've heard other people, Browns fans, have tried to tell Browns fans, like, listen, this defense can be really, really good and not be what it was last year because there were some, especially at the start of the year, there was some historic stuff going on in Cleveland as well, and some of it was weather and bad quarterbacks and bad teams, and it's like you can still be really, really good and just not hit historic numbers because that's kind of rare air. It's like just remember. That's what I just like. Just remember.
Yeah, and the one part too is I'll take you back to Lamar's first MVP season, and there was a lot of discourse coming out of that year where he threw for 36 touchdowns, had the 6 interceptions, put up all these NFL history numbers, and then the next season, everybody was like, when I kind of said, guys, it is realistic that maybe he takes a step back in some of these categories. He's not. Guys or teams or defenses or players, they're not going to get better every single season on historic years. Like for Lamar, we're talking 36 passing touchdowns in 2019. We're entering 2024. He'd be up to 70 passing touchdowns by now per season if we talked about constant improvement every single season. It's just not realistic. So I 100% agree where you can take a small step back and still be really good because to expect improvement year after year after year after year after year, sometimes there are just things that happen, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be an elite group. I still expect Baltimore to be an elite group, but again, it might just be a little harder for them to do it this year.
I'm asking a selfish question here. And this is a tale as old as time. If I fall in love with a prospect, there's like a 70% chance he's either going to Baltimore or Pittsburgh. It's just how this works for me. And in 2022, I was really high on Travis Jones.
Yep.
And I saw him as a definite starter in the league. And honestly, people were really high on Jordan Davis going into that draft. And I thought Travis Jones' ceiling was very similar. And you'd be able to get him later. You guys got him in the third round, I think 76 overall. Is this the year he takes a step forward and supplants Michael Pierce, or is he still just going to be a depth piece this year?
Yeah, you kind of read my mind with this one because he's been my breakout pick for the Ravens, like the guy for me pretty much all off season. The thing with Travis Jones is, and I mean, everybody who kind of like I fell in love with him as I didn't think he'd be available in the second round, maybe even where the Ravens. I mean, I was seeing him in like first round mocks, like end of the first round, got him in the middle of the third. He's a guy that's incredible as a run defender. He is a great interior pass rusher. He's that do it all type player. To me, it's going to be a matter of where they get him opportunities. I do think they want to keep Michael Pierce a little more fresh this year, maybe manage his snaps a little bit more. So Matabike is going to be a big part of, obviously a big part of the defense. You don't want to take away those snaps. But I think seeing more of a rotation between Michael Pierce and Travis Jones, I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever because Pierce to me was one of the most underrated Ravens last season, but he has dealt with injury issues over the course of his career here and there. So the smarter thing to do for the Ravens, and we kind of had this conversation in Baltimore with Calais Campbell when he was kind of entering his last season with the team, is like he's still super effective, but you don't want to wear him out because obviously there's a difference in Campbell's sake. It was between like 27 and 34. Like there's a difference in just how everything works. So I think for Jones, he's someone that has already shown a lot of flashes and a lot of potential. And I think if we see a strong preseason for him, we could see a huge role because this defensive line room with veterans, with young guys, they're extremely deep. But Travis Jones is the guy that I have my eye on for sure.
Do we have any more? We going to move to the offense? Do either of you guys have any more on the defense?
I'm good. We shift over the offense now.
I always do that without asking, and I'm like, you know what? I will be courteous for once. So
I'm going to throw a special teams question in there. You never know.
Oh, Ravens love their special teams. I wouldn't blame you.
Hey, Listen, we had a kicker and a punter that were worth a damn last year. So we did like I understand the fact because then
we had no kicker.
Hopkins, he's the first. Nobody else has ever done 50+ yarders in 5 straight games. Hopkins did that last year. Like that was which is hilarious because he was perfect from over 50 last year, and in his career going into that, he was 15 of 30 over 50 yards. Yeah, going into last year, it's just like he's like, I'm just gonna.
I'll tell you, I am terrified for the day that Justin Tucker retires here in Baltimore because I have become so numb to everything kicking where it's just like, all right, 58 yarder, easy money, not a doubt in the world. It's going in. And that has been like Ravens fans' lives for the last decade plus. So it's like we have gotten so spoiled here over the special teams thing. Obviously, Baltimore is, known for their special teams anyway with Harbaugh, but the day Justin Tucker retires and we kind of have to go back into that, like, all right, who's the kicker now? And then he can't hit like 58+ yarders, 60 yarders with ease. It's going to be like, man, this is what this felt like. I can't even imagine. So hopefully he plays for a long time, but
I'm just going to
that never comes.
Best ever do it.
I'm just going to take a guess and say Phil Dawson left the Browns in like 2014, 2015.
2012 was his last season.
Okay. So Phil Dawson left the Browns in 2012, and he's probably the best kicker I've ever seen in a Browns uniform. And it took us until last year with Dustin Hopkins to finally find somebody else to consistently kick.
There was some, like, Billy Cundiff had some success. Like, they had some success, but, like, they were always guys where you were just like, I remember that awesome Monday night game, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson. He runs into the locker room, comes out, that Monday night game. When they got in field goal range, I was so close to just turning it off because Tucker was going to come out, and he did, obviously. But, like, it was like when I flip it on its head after Phil left, and you got the block 6. So that's the shit we dealt with like in those prime times. So I can say, like, and I know that most Ravens fans are very like you, singing his praises and things like that. But it's so crazy how that one position that you don't think about all the time could end up being something you talk about all the time. But okay, let's move to the offense. I want to start with the skill position. I want to start with the wide receiver room because I think it's a very interesting room. Really love what they did with Zay Flowers last year. It was Zay Flowers. I was so hot and cold on him in the draft process, and then he went to Baltimore, and I convinced myself that I hated him. And then he went out there, and he was really freaking good. And I was like, shit, I was right. So like that really frustrated me. But injuries with Bateman. Bateman was a draft crush of mine, and ultimately they go with Greg Newsome that year. But I'm a Tez Walker guy. I really can't understand what happened to Tez Walker last year. It was kind of a mess down there, and then the Senior Bowl was bad. But just kind of talk us through some of them wide receivers and how you feel about that group.
Yeah, Zay being the one to me is fine. It's a fine thing. And we know that this Ravens offense is run-centric. And we were kind of having these conversations even when Marquise Brown was still in Baltimore. It's like, how much is this team truly going to invest in the wide receiver position? Now, with Lamar on not his rookie deal anymore, I mean, to me, this was a situation where they should have gone out there and gotten somebody when Lamar was still on the rookie deal, and they didn't do it. But with this being such a run-centric offense, you know, it's how much do they really need to pay a wide receiver? Is it even worth it to pay a wide receiver that much in that offense? And two, what wide receivers want to come and play in Baltimore? And that's been the other question as well. It's not a Lamar thing. You know, there have been receivers on record saying, yo, I'd love to play with Lamar. It'd be cool. But there are receivers on record. I remember Juju Smith-Schuster on Michael Irvin's podcast, and I think at this time he was deciding between the Ravens, Steelers, and Chiefs, and I think that was when he went back to Pittsburgh on a one-year deal. He was like, yeah, Lamar's awesome, but that offense is just like, where are my targets? And so to me, the Ravens have to kind of try to draft and develop. The issue is they've been terrible at that over the course of their franchise history. So Flowers has the potential to break that because he's a 3-level guy. The route running is incredible. He's not your prototypical one. Like he's not that like AJ Brown build or DK Metcalf build. Like he is on the smaller side for a wide receiver one, but he still gets the job done. The make or break though is Bateman, because they decided to go the route of, hey, we're going to trust you to be the number 2 here. And which, by the way, they did this to an even bigger extent in 2022 when they decided, all right, we're going to make you the 1 after 1 half season. And we're just going to roll with it and see what happens. And at the time I was like, this could work, but it's pretty scary. And then he gets injured and Devin Duvernay gets injured. So you were down your 2 receivers, and that season was just a mess overall. But this time, at least there's no one that Bateman has to turn his shoulder and go, oh, is that guy going to take my snaps? Like, this is a full belief. Where last season they brought in Odell, and they signed him to a huge contract. It was a 1-year deal. It was like $18 million, I think 15 guaranteed, worth up to 18. And we never really established who was the 2 and who was the 3. And I think that kind of wore. But if your name is not Marquise Brown, if your name is not Mark Andrews, and if your name is not Zay Flowers, with the way this Ravens offense is, you're getting anywhere from 2 to 4 targets a game. Like that's just how this Ravens offense works. So it's hard to get into a rhythm. So I would expect more of a run passing. Baltimore's first in rushing attempts last season, but 30th in passing attempts. I expect more of that to happen, where it's maybe they don't even have to be like a top 10 in attempts. It can be top 18, top 21. But I think that will help everybody involved. But to me, I think the key is Bateman performing, and then Aguilar is your 3 now. He gets a promotion from number 4 to number 3. Tez Walker is the 4 now. And then Deontay Hardy's more of the returner. We know with those kickoff rules, returners become ever so more important now. So we're going to have that. So it's an unproven room. It's a younger room. But to me, I think that it's one where Lamar can work with it, especially because in this offense anyway, guys, the tight ends are the number 1 passing options anyway. It's Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely.
That's exactly where I was going. That's where Lamar butters his bread right there, the middle of the field. Everyone knows he owns the middle of the field. Every team goes into it with the same thing. Okay, you got to force him to throw outside the numbers, take away escape lanes, but then you can't do it. It's one thing to have the plan, implementing it and actually executing is another thing. So Lamar owns the middle of the field, no doubt about it. And like you said, it's Isaiah Likely, it's Mark Andrews. with Todd Monken, do you anticipate a heavy dose of 12 personnel due to the young receivers, due to the proclivity of throwing in the middle of the field? And do you see Isaiah likely taking a step to maybe pull on par with Andrews this year?
Yeah, I do expect more 12 personnel. I honestly might go and say that, this is not 2019 anymore. We're far and away removed from that season. But part of what made that offense so successful was them using 3 tight end sets. And with Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kohler, they can replicate some of that. But the key for the tight end room is to figure out how they can go about using Andrews and Likely together, because we haven't really seen that. The past 2 seasons, the reason Likely has gotten more opportunities is because Mark Andrews has gone down with an injury, and so he has stepped up. And actually, that has allowed Lamar to go and spread out the ball more because he and Mark Andrews have such a connection together. And they essentially play street ball most of the time, where they have such a feel for each other. They will go off script and off play, and Mark Andrews will work his way back to Lamar when he's scrambling out there, and they just know where to be for each other. But we have to see it with Likely and Andrews, because I think for Likely, guys, he would be a number one, like the starting tight end on 25 of 32 teams. That's how good he is already. And that's a luxury. That's a huge luxury. And it works within the parameters of what Baltimore wants to do, because now with Derrick Henry in the fold as well, if you bring out your heavy personnel, and this is, again, what made the 2019 team so good, you have to bring out your heavy – on defense, you got to bring out your heavy guys for the most part. And then you can just work play action off of that, because you're so worried about trying to stop Derrick Henry and all these big tight ends trying to block you, get off the ball. And it's okay. Now Mark Andrews is running right by me. Now Isaiah Likely is running a wheel route on me. Like, what are we doing here? So that, to me, is where they can be especially effective this season. I think Andrews will still be the number one target getter. He'll still be the number one catch receiver on this team. But I think that Likely probably will fall in line right behind Andrews and Zay and probably get the number 3 amount of targets, number 3 amount of catches. He's going to be really involved for them this season. I don't know his future beyond his rookie contract. I'd probably think that with the way things are going, he'd probably price himself out of Baltimore, because I think a lot of teams are looking for, who's the best tight end to hit the market in the last couple of seasons? Has it been Dalton Schultz? Like, is it one of those guys? Like,
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So I think Likely is earning himself a big payday. So Baltimore has to take advantage of what they have now, because he is such a luxury in that offense.
Kevin, you mentioned the elephant in the room, probably the most premier addition to the Ravens this offseason. It felt like it was such a long time coming, but Derrick Henry's a Raven, which feels about as fitting as it could possibly be. And so I'm just curious. Now, Keaton Mitchell last year was so exciting and explosive. He tears his ACL, and that's a tough pill to swallow. I know he's going to be working his way back. The Titans just ran the wheels off Derrick Henry, and he held up like nobody's business. Are you expecting him to just come into Baltimore? He's just going to get, 25, 28 carries a game? Is it like maybe Rasheen Ali? I know he's a rookie that has interested some people. How do you see this backfield going? What's your outlook for Derrick Henry?
Yeah, I love the fit. I love it. I know there was some questions about how he was going to purely fit into this Ravens offense just based off of how Tennessee ran their system versus how Baltimore runs theirs. But I think he has quieted a lot of those questions, because everybody looks at Derrick Henry and he's a mountain of a man, right? He is a massive human being, but he has underrated speed to him that I don't think a lot of people really see, because he is that big. So that foot speed for him has been able to kind of silence that, because he can work in tandem with Lamar in that way. In terms of his actual workload, I would be shocked if Baltimore ran him into the ground like Tennessee did. And I agree with you, Nick. I looked at those numbers and I was shocked at, first of all, how many carries he was getting on a year-to-year basis in Tennessee, and how he was healthy for essentially all of those years but one. And that durability is insane. But I do think they understand, and it is that vaunted number for running backs, that number 30, turns 30 years old, and everyone's like, all right, where are we going to go here? And the Ravens went through it with Mark Ingram a couple of years ago, where it was like he was so good for them in 2019, had 15 total touchdowns, then fell off a cliff the next season. Now, Henry's a much better player than Mark Ingram, so I'm not necessarily expecting that. He's going to be the bell cow. And Baltimore hasn't really had that in the Lamar Jackson era, where it's been always a tandem, Gus Edwards, JK, all these different players. but I would expect anywhere from 18 to 20 carries a game for Derrick Henry. Maybe them shifting in. Justice Hill is a guy that when Keaton Mitchell is out, he'll slot in as that number 2 back. I'd expect him to maybe get 5 to 6 to 7 a game. And then you mentioned Rasheen Ali. He'll probably get a few. But then I expect Henry's workload to actually decrease when Keaton Mitchell comes back because, like you mentioned, Nick, how exciting he was. And he and Derrick Henry are kind of that yin-yang of different skill sets in the backfield. And obviously we can talk about Lamar and Henry like that as well. But that lightning in a bottle for Keaton is such a big thing, and you don't want to limit that. He's one of your best offensive weapons, and you want to be able to give him touches. More than Derrick Henry? No, we're not going that far. But I still think that if you utilize Derrick Henry correctly and not wear him like Tennessee did, it's just less wear and tear. It keeps him fresh for the end of the season. It almost reminds me, guys, Brandon Jacobs, back when he was with the Giants, had this quote, and I can't remember the exact quote, but he was like, "Who wants to tackle me in the fourth quarter of a December game?" Like going up against Brandon. Imagine Derrick Henry. Who wants to tackle Derrick Henry? It's especially a fresh Derrick Henry who doesn't have that wear and tear that he did in Tennessee build up over the course of time. Because like a guy cannot have an injury designation but can still be banged up based off of the amount of work that they get. Mm-hmm. So if you're in December, if you're hopefully in January for the Ravens, if Derrick Henry has just a little bit more freshness to him, that can make all the world of difference. And I'll tell you this, guys. I hope that they don't run him only 6 times in the AFC Championship game. Otherwise, we're going to have other issues here in Baltimore.
It was funny that you said
running the ball, man.
I'm telling you, oh man, people still aren't over it here, and they won't be over it for a really long time.
I get it. I think it's funny though because you said 18 to 20 right before you said that. Our good friend MC predicted 15 to 20.
Oh, yeah,
you kind of followed it up, and my good friend Pat. Weighing in the Derrick Henry stuff. I wanted to look at the numbers just real quick about the overall because I wanted to look at Derrick Henry's played in 119 games. He has carried the ball 2,030 times. And that doesn't count. Hold on, and he also has 155 receptions. So you're talking almost 2,200 times he touched the ball in 119.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just as a football enjoyer, I think when we look back at Derrick Henry, one of the most impressive things will simply be that he, in a sea of running back injuries every year, he just always stayed out on the field. It's unbelievable that a guy as big as him can well, I guess he's probably more built for it.
The only year 21 he played 8 games. That was it.
That's nuts in today's running back world.
Yeah, it's insane. You look at those numbers as like low 300s, high 200s year in and year out, and you're exactly right. Where guys with a lot less workload are getting injured a lot more. And Derrick Henry. Now there was an article that came out in The Athletic about a week or so ago, and it said that he puts about $200 and some change $1,000 into his body every season. So that might have something to do with it. But again, that durability it's very rare in today's NFL, especially when you get that much workload.
4.7 yards per carry is his career average. So we're clear.
Kevin, I can't let you get out of here without asking an uncomfortable question.
Oh boy.
Does Lamar Jackson have an addiction to gas station sushi? Like, what is going on there? He's perpetually getting these sickness, these illnesses, and where's it coming from?
Yeah, is it gas station sushi? Is it shrimp Alfredo? I don't know. I don't know what we got going on. Obviously, for Lamar, it's been the thing is, it's a yearly sickness, and if the yearly sickness is coming out in training camp as opposed to during the season, all right, you know what? I guess we'll take that. But this I don't know if you want to call it a saga or not, because he returned to practice on Wednesday, left after about an hour, and it's hot out here. It's hot out here in Baltimore and humid and all this different stuff. So when you're sick and that combination kind of hits you, yeah, you're not going to be 100%. But I don't know what it is. I mean, I think at this point it's safe to assume his immune system is maybe not as strong as some other people's, just in this case. But I don't know what it is. Tests have been negative. Apparently, we got that information today, and he's dealing with a flu-like situation. So hopefully those symptoms will clear. But again, I think, we've all, I mean, I certainly have been there where I've been sick for a week plus. I've had that where something has crept up on me, and I've been out of commission and haven't been able to get out of bed or move or anything like that. So I don't know what's going on with Jackson. I mean, obviously you want to have him out on the field for training camp, but if he's not feeling 100%, it doesn't really do anybody any good to have him out there. Obviously, I think everybody in the game that we mentioned earlier of him going into the locker room in Cleveland, coming back out, he calls it the cramp game. I think everybody else calls it something else. But I think at the end of the day, I'm still waiting for when he retires and he actually like makes that revelation. He's like, all right, actually, let me tell the story. But to me, I don't know. It's tough because you want him to be okay, you want him to be out there, but obviously health takes precedent. And I don't know. At this point, just let him be healthy. Let him get this out of the way now, and just play football the rest of the way is, I guess, the silver lining out of it. But you hope he's better as soon as he can be.
This is not a football question, so this is where I like to wrap the show up with something stupid.
So let's go.
All right. So have you guys ever seen the John Breaks Bad News guy on social media? Like, so you can contact him. And he'll call your friend and break the bad news to you. Like, you could be like, hey, call me. There's been some serious ones. There was one where somebody paid him to call somebody and accused that person of grooming. Like, it was crazy. I was like, oh my God, like, we should not be doing this. But it's usually pretty funny. So I saw one the other day, and I just need to know what you guys would do in this situation. It's a very simple question. So anyway, John calls him and he talks to the guy about how he hasn't had a girlfriend in 7 years. And they think that it's probably because the other day when he was driving home from work, after he'd had some Taco Bell, he shit his pants. And his response to that was to tell everybody on Snapchat that he had shit his pants. If I shit my pants, I'm telling no one. Like, I'm going somewhere, I'm buying pants, I'm burning them. I'm not telling, and I just wanted to make sure I'm not crazy. Like, you're not telling anybody, right?
What?
Yeah. What's the phrase everybody uses? Like, Batman couldn't even get that out of me. Is that what that's what the phrase is on Twitter? I'm not telling a single soul about that. There's no shot. You were like, yeah, football, great podcast. Shit your pants. All right.
I've got one last football because it's no secret that I wear rose-colored glasses. And Kevin, I wanted to ask you because you're obviously a Ravens fan and cover the Ravens. I'm just curious to know how somebody outside of our little Brown sphere here, if you had to say how the AFC North standings are going to finish this year, because especially the Browns, everybody's got opinions all over the map. So I'm just curious, like 1 through 4. I'm sorry to spring this on you, but what would you pick the final standings of the AFC North to be this year?
No, you're good. I think to me, I'm projecting 3 playoff teams from the North. Again, I think that's how it's going to go. I think it will be a little different though. I think all teams are probably going to finish within like 3 games of each other, 1 through 4. I'm probably going to go Baltimore, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And that's how I'm going to have it, where the season for Cleveland, I mean, I think you guys, I mean, it's all on Deshaun Watson here. It's, the roster around him. And I, on this show last time I was on, I said, I am a big fan of what Andrew Berry has done with this roster. I personally didn't love the Deshaun Watson move. Like, that wasn't a thing I was a big fan of. But outside of that, like, I think he's done a great job roster constructing. And now you have Amari Cooper back in the building. You get Jerry Jeudy, who I think, I think it's just a change of scenery had to happen there, regardless of where he went. It's just a change of scenery had to happen. So to me, I feel like the defense is good enough. There aren't questions there. But it's about on the offensive side of the ball, can Deshaun Watson look anything like his Houston self? Or can he look anything like he did against Baltimore in that game where he went 13-13 with the shoulder and then was lost for the season? So that's what it's going to be. If he can't live up to that expectation, I think it might be another rough year for Cleveland. If he can turn it around a little bit, I think something might be cooking over there, but it's all going to depend on him.
Yeah, you said 3 playoff teams and named Cleveland as one of them, so that's good by me.
That works for him.
All right, last thing, and this is football related, sort of. Is Stavros is Stavy a national treasure for you guys? The way that he is for us, because those Ronnie videos, man, like I look forward to him every week.
Oh, so good. They had him do. I don't know if you saw. They had him do the schedule release for the Ravens this year. Yes. And he was flying all over the place and announcing the opponents. He is loved in this city.
Yeah,
he was.
That's good.
The social team for the Ravens has really I guess, taken a liking to him, and he's in a bunch of their content now. So every time that drops, I'm like, yes, like this is exactly what I came here for. So yeah, he's loved here.
Well, Kevin, we really appreciate you making it 2 years in a row. We hope you'll make it 3 next year when we do our
Absolutely.
preview. Let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. This was a blast. You can find me over, first of all, on social media, Twitter, Instagram at Oestreicher34. And then I also host and produce the Locked on Ravens podcast. So we do 5 days a week over there. You can subscribe for Ravens content there on YouTube. You can follow along in audio form wherever you get your shows. I also write over at the Ravens Wire. So my written content's over there. I also do some work for Bleacher Report, do live streams over there. And then also a part of the Ryan Ripken show. We talk Orioles over there, Ravens. I know it's a very busy trade deadline season. The Orioles made 2 moves today. So we're talking baseball over there. And I know the O's are competing with the Guardians for that top spot in the AL. So we have a lot of fun talking baseball, football, and Baltimore sports over there too.
Okay. Well, with that said, there's about 500 of you here right now, and we will love you if you click the subscribe button on YouTube as we push to our 1,000 subs and giveaway as we rebuild this channel back up from the ground. We love you all and we appreciate you letting us chase dreams here. So with that being said, this has been a Barking Browns Ravens preview. And Nick, he's Kevin, it's Jacob, he's Casey. Go Browns.
Yeah, that thing that you said.